The dark effects of bullying. Content warning. I know it is likely pretty obvious, but folks, we're going to touch on some rough topics here, up to and including self-termination. Story 1. There was a girl the year behind me in an all-girls private school who didn't have a lot of friends and was very shy. Some of my friends and I were in the same after-school club as her, makeup club. She was a sweet girl, but she wore a ton of makeup every day that she honestly wasn't all that great at applying. A lot of girls were on the same boat, but this girl was very quiet and did not stand up for herself, so it made her an easy target for ridicule. No one knew her well at all, so people would call her names behind her back. My friends coined the nicknames Cake Face and Robot Girl because of her very thin, rigid figure and the layers of makeup she applied to her face. I never took part in this until my best friend did, and I would laugh along when my friends shouted Cake Face down the hallway, never saying anything because the girl would just smile back and walk away. I always figured she had a good friend group somewhere else, and because of that, the bullying never got to her. She was always so kind and always smiled. Anyway, me and a few of my friends ended up getting kicked out of the school after that year for something completely unrelated, but the bullying was perpetuated by girls much more popular than I, so they had a lot more reach, and the bullying became much crueler than I ever thought it could get. And it all began with the names my friends had called her, and I had laughed at these names and said nothing to stop them. The girl walked out into the woods with her dad's shotgun one day and blew her brains out. I always assumed she didn't let the bullying get to her because she always had a smile on her face and always spoke kindly to me, my friends, and even other girls who bullied her at school. So, in the end, I don't think the self-termination was any fault of my own, but I do take responsibility for not speaking up and putting an end to the bullying. And I feel so crappy for perpetuating horrible nicknames that tormented a sweet girl until she decided to kill herself. It's been a while, but I'm still sorry, and I think I will continue to be for a long time. I never knew how bad it was, and if I had separated myself from everything for a minute and reflected, I would have realized how awful things must have been for her. I'm sorry. I always assumed she didn't let the bullying get to her because she always had a smile on her face and always spoke kindly to me, my friends, and even other girls who bullied her at school. Usually not a safe assumption, directed at people reading this and not OP because she realized this by now. Yeah, just because someone doesn't seem hurt by the stuff you're saying doesn't mean it isn't hurting them. And folks, laughing at bullying and allowing it to happen, especially just going along with friends doing the bullying, is basically endorsing it. Your willingness to stand against that kind of stuff could make all the difference in the world. I don't want to place blame on you because no one person should have all the blame for a choice someone makes, but, well, it's something you'll have to live with. Story 2. There was a girl named Carrie in my elementary school who was always considered a bit off. Really quirky, and she didn't really have a lot of friends. Granted, I wasn't popular at that point in my life either, so Carrie kind of hung out with the people that I did. I remembered her being bullied, and the leader of my group was mean to her as well. I may have laughed at the stuff said to her, but I never said any of the mean comments. Like others in this situation, I was too much of a wimp and afraid to turn into the target to stand up to her. That being said, her and I did hang out outside of school, and I did consider her a friend. Plus, at the end of 6th grade, most of us would divide up and go into middle school, so I just assumed we would all start fresh. The summer before middle school, I found out that she had died. We were told that it was a freak accident, and she was wearing a scarf while jumping on the top bunk bed in her room. And her scarf got caught on her ceiling fan that was on, and she hung to death. I don't believe that story for a second. Like I said, I hung out with her and had been to her house. There wasn't any room for her to be jumping on her top bunk. I really believe she committed self-termination because of the bullying, and I still feel terrible when I think about this. I went on to be the recipient of some brutal bullying that resulted in my own self-destructive thoughts and self-mutilation, so looking back, I wish I had been tougher because I ended up knowing her pain. It sucks. It's one of the absolute worst feelings in the world. Rest in peace, Carrie. I'm sorry. I should have been a better friend to you. Why the frick would anyone make up a ridiculous reason for her death like that? It makes it even more obvious that it was a self-termination. They should have just said she died of a heart problem or something, not a scarf magically winding itself very firmly SUBSC around a bunk bed and her neck. So, to continue from my last comment where I said to just stand by is to basically endorse it, but this OP makes a good point about being afraid to stand up. And hey, as a child that age, It can be hard to know what to do, but just know that you should try to do something if you can. Talk to someone. I don't know. I wish I had all the answers. Story 3. I felt pretty awful about this my entire life. When I was 15 or so, we had this one kid come and hang out at our table during lunchtime quite often. The reason my friends made fun of him was for no reason other than he was just a weird kid. Now, I personally didn't join in on the ragging. I actually thought he was pretty funny. But I never stopped my friends from doing it and usually laughed at their jokes, so I'm no less guilty than anyone. One guy was really bad on him. He wasn't a good person at all. He didn't have many interesting things to say, so he used to make fun of others as a way to fit in, I suppose. He craved attention, and us laughing at his jokes was his way to get in. He freaking constantly went after this kid, to the point where if he said anything at all, the guy would say some comment to make fun of him over it. He stopped coming to our table after a couple of months, and I would only ever see him sitting in some side hallways eating lunch alone or whatnot. Over the summer, he jumped in front of a car and killed himself. No note or anything, but everyone knew why. After learning more about him, he was actually an awesome kid, played football for some clubs, really great at drawing, and all sorts of other things. Had he been given the chance to contribute to conversations, he would have been liked and adored as anyone else. Bullying is never okay, and being silent and letting it happen around you is just as bad. For some reason or another, some kids just unfairly become targets, and that leads to all the buttholes in the world taking advantage of them. It's something I've always been ashamed of, and I've honestly tried being as nice to everyone around me as much as I can. But there were literally dozens of moments I could have told my friends to cut it out, and they would have listened to me. But I didn't. I never said anything. I always just let that crap happen around me. Rest in peace, Steve. A note to the Steves of the world going through bullying like this: it sucks, and I am so sorry, but I promise you it can get better. Kids and teens can just be awful sometimes. If you are having self-destructive thoughts, please talk to someone you can trust, a parent, a teacher, anyone, please. Story 4. I was just a kid, got in high school, and started picking on the child everyone was picking on. Eventually, he went to a teacher to cry about it, and the teacher took me out of another class and pretty much backed me off in a wall, pointing finger and telling me how wrong I was. He literally told me to stop taking him, the teacher, for a frickin' idiot with my excuses and leave the poor kid alone. He told me I had no reason to act that way, and I was being a stupid little sucker. It didn't make sense at that moment, although I appreciated that teacher a lot and didn't want to disappoint, so I pretty much just stopped all interactions with the bullied kid. Fast forward 2 years, I started talking to that same kid. I started seeing through his eyes the crap he was living with and got to know him a little. I eventually gained his trust, and even though he was still a reject at school, I brought him in my gang. At first, my friends were telling me to get him to leave, but I stood up for him. I told them no one had a reason to hate on him, and basically imposed him to my friends so he wouldn't be alone. The year after, he couldn't take it anymore at school, getting picked on every day. He went outside at the start of the afternoon and was crying on the sidewalk. I joined him and listened to him. He thanked me, saying he would have committed self-termination a long time ago if it wasn't for my support. That hit me hard. To this day, we don't talk much anymore. He started using and crap, and I've studied to become a police officer. I always told him, though, that when he'll stop being an outlaw, he can just message me and we'll meet. I can't believe that hadn't been from that first high school year teacher, I'd have a kid's self-termination haunting me. Thank God that teacher was put there to set me straight. Instead, I can smile thinking I helped a kid go through some hard stuff and make it out alive. Story 5. His name was Richard P. Lang Bruner, an unassuming teenager who joined the Army young from Fort Wayne, Indiana. He killed himself on April 17, 2007. I wasn't his bully, but I could have been a better friend. We were just into Baghdad as his first push of the troop surge. He was small and socially awkward. He couldn't pull his weight, so he still got crap for it. His first-line supervisor and NCO, who will remain unnamed, decided to berate this kid after a grueling 48-hour operation. He walked into the barracks room we were sharing and shot himself in the head with a 9mm. He is reported to have died from non-combat-related injuries. I cry about it. I lost contact with his parents, and that kills me. I wasn't the kind of friend that could have saved him. I burned a cigarette into my left hand and have the scar to this day. What really destroys me is his resemblance to the lead singer of The Fray in the music video How to Save a Life. It's ironic and uncanny. You can Google his name and do a comparison for yourself. That song was about him. I will never forgive myself for letting rank get in the way. I got several Article 15s for getting in fights with NCOs after that crap. I had my chance to be there for a friend, and I blew it. I'm not responsible, and I know that, but I ask myself what I could have done differently. I think everyone who loses a friend to self-termination goes through that, but it's been 9 years. I don't want it to stop hurting, ever. That's probably the answer to the ops question. It hurts all the time, and I want it to. I don't want to forget him or forget what I frisked up. If I ever see the signs again, I will know what is happening. Just knowing someone who commits self-termination increases your chance of committing self-termination by 46%. People start giving away their crap before they kill themselves sometimes. They go from miserable to euphorically happy on a whim. I can't forget, so it won't happen again. I miss him, and as long as I'm alive, I'll remember him. That's the thing, folks. If you can ever think of something you can do for someone who seems to be struggling, do it as long as it's reasonable. Otherwise, if they end their own life, you'll be left wondering what more you could have done. But also, as tough as I've been on folks just standing by and letting bullying happen, you also can't blame yourself. You could admit you made a mistake, take steps to do better, and move on. But also, don't forget. Story 6. When I was in high school, I was kind of a hybrid weird kid/bully. There was a senior who always used to frick with me. I think his name was Glenn. He used to punch me in the arm, back, whatever, full force out of nowhere and tease me about anything and everything. One day I had enough and went full bully mode on him. I'm pretty physically imposing now, but I wasn't then, so my weapon of choice was wit. I proceeded to just frickin' destroy him. I tore into him for like 10 minutes. I blasted everything about him from his physical appearance, intelligence, and socioeconomic standing. I ended with the most fricked up thing you can say to a person. Nobody would give a crap if you killed yourself. That weekend, he hung himself in his closet with his karate belt. There was some fricked up self-termination pact going on in my high school, and nobody who heard me lay into him thought it was my fault. It still really fricked me up for years. I started using, and the guilt just ate me up. I've since got my crap together, but I think about the last words I said to that kid almost every single day. Wherever you are, Glenn, whatever the reason, I hope you're at peace. Story 7. I may be a bit late to the thread, but here's my story. In 5th grade, a new kid came to my school who wasn't in the best shape. He was rather large, and he got a lot of bullying coming into the school. People would make fun of his size while I stood there just watching. Sooner rather than later, I befriended him. He was really cool, into video games just like me, and we became good friends, but the bullying never stopped. His anger spiraled out of control. He started gaining more weight more rapidly than before, shut himself from everyone except for me, really. 6th grade came around and we were sitting at lunch. Everyone at the table was making fun of him, calling him fat and the like, and I got fed up with it. I stood up for him finally after not saying anything for a regretful while. My popularity level crumpled in on itself, and we both began to take heat. Later that day, he thanked me with tears in his own eyes that no one has ever done anything like that for him in 6 years. Fast forward 6 years to 12th grade, me and him talked and had a bro-to-bro conversation. He told me he was going to commit self-termination that night, but I changed his mind. Me not being a bystander anymore saved his life. Too long didn't read. Saved a life by not being a quiet bee. Good job. Keep the spirit up because this is exactly what is missing in today's Western society. Sometimes you have to be willing to sacrifice your own popularity in order to do the right thing. But let me tell you, popularity in school means nothing to you once you're out of school. Guilt, on the other hand, will stick with you. Story 8. The kids that I bullied when I was younger didn't kill themselves. Their parents just relocated with them. One of them got relocated halfway across the country to Arizona with his grandparents, and the other got moved across town. I pretty much ruined several people's childhoods, and I have to live with that. I also know how it happened and what I did to them, so when I used to work with kids, I did my best to prevent the things that I did from happening to other kids. So much bullying among kids is enabled by adults, and there's a difference between kids being kids and what I did. My parents were sick of hearing about me getting in trouble at school, so the school stopped calling them. The school I went to also enabled it by never punishing me or anyone else who picked on these kids. I literally had to go and sit in the principal's office about once a day for an hour before going back to class, and that was it. Rarely even talking to the principal. When I was older, teachers didn't even bother to say anything. A lot of times, I think about finding the people that I was so horrible to and apologizing, but I'm not sure that they would want to hear from someone who ruined their childhood. Thaddeus, Devin, and Matt, I really am sorry for what I did when I was a kid. Even if they don't forgive you, even if they never want to talk to you again, even if they scream at you for hours on end about what you did to them, you owe it to them to find them and apologize. I was bullied, and it meant a lot to me that some of those who bullied me apologized. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 9. I was a bully from grades 2 to 8, reaching a peak at about grade 5, and decided consciously to stop being mean around grade 7. I was a young girl, my parents divorced the summer before grade 1. I had 3 older brothers who took it hard, so did I, and were rough with me. I learned to defend myself, became quite physically strong, and because I felt powerless in my home life, I chose to find a sense of power in the schoolyard. I was physically abusive, punching, pushing, tipping people's desks over, wrecking kids' projects, and had a sharp tongue. I would go out of my way to sniff out insecurities and say anything mean that I could to make a kid cry. It was quite mean. I was also a cyberbully. I remember telling one girl at my school over a messaging service that she was fat and ugly and no one would ever do it with her. I'm still ashamed of that. This girl became severely anorexic and bulimic starting in grade 8, and by grade 12 was in the hospital and almost dead. I tried to reach out and apologize and be there for her. At this point, I had done a 180 after heavy therapy in my early years, but I understood why she didn't want to talk to me. I saw her last year on my walk to work, and I smiled and said hi. She had a baby in a stroller. I was really happy for her, but I still feel guilt for being such an awful human growing up. There are still a handful of people who have a very low opinion of me, although I came around and made a public apology for being a crappy person. But hurts run deep. Ugh, the feels. I definitely caused a girl to develop an eating disorder, which I didn't find out until years later at a party when she was wasted and told me I frisked her up, and that she'd been waiting years to hear me say sorry. Karma definitely bit me in the butt, though. I ended up being hospitalized for bulimia/anorexia myself years later. It is nice to hear about these bullies who realize what they've done and have made steps to turn their lives around. You can never undo what you've done, but you can take ownership of it. You're still in this world, so bring some goodness into it. Story 10. So, I got bullied a lot and then turned the tables and unknowingly, and then knowingly, became the bully. He killed himself after. I got tormented by a kid 1 year younger than me in elementary school, non-stop. I was in 5th grade and already getting bullied. Weird name, poor family, so I had cheap and nerdy clothes, etc. by my own grade. Then he started in on me because I was an easy target. I took it for a few months because I had no choice. Finally, I was in a trailer bathroom. School had run out of capacity, so most of our classes were in trailers, including the bathroom, and he pushed me while I tried to frantically leave. I didn't know what to do, but he pushed me pretty hard. Without thinking, I kid-slapped him in the face. I don't think anyone had ever responded that way, and he just started to tear up, almost crying, but not yet. I had a nervous laugh, and still do, and I jetted out of there. I then turned the tables. Next thing you know, I was calling him Pretty Boy, and his buddy had seen me hit him. Well, the name stuck, and now everyone started picking on him. A lot. Of course, I baited it on. So, I became a bully without really knowing it because it was easier to pile on to someone else's misery than face up to my own. Well, his parents pulled him from school about a year later. He moved districts because of me. I am so ashamed of my 5th grade self that it is sad. I wish I could have known that he was only picking on me because he probably had a rough life that I did not know about. I just used it as an easy out. He killed himself in 8th grade. I will never really forgive myself, but I will hope to teach my children that bullies are bullies because they have larger issues that we don't know about. Sorry for the rant, but this hits home. I hate looking back knowing that I was once the bully. Too long didn't read. I turned the table on a bully and became one. His parents had to pull him from our school district, and he killed himself 3 years later. I will always feel mostly to blame. 3 years is a really long time, especially at that age. I doubt you had much to do with it. Story 11. I got a reverse experience. One of the kids who bullied me in high school killed himself our senior year. He was incredibly popular among certain cliques, so of course everyone was upset about it. For a long time, I honestly could not work up any kind of sympathy for his passing. I had hated him for years and in a perverse way was glad he was gone because it meant he couldn't give me crap about whatever stuck his fancy anymore. Now that I'm older, I have more maturity to recognize that his bullying was a symptom of a deeper underlying issue. He desperately needed attention, didn't know how to properly ask for it, and succumbed to his internal demons. More than anything, I mourn his parents' loss of their son. No one should bury their child, even if he was a little crap to other kids. I would have hoped he'd have grown up to be kinder to everyone and not just his friends, as he certainly had the capacity to be kind when he wanted to be. Same situation, only the bully had a random brain clot. The school newspaper was asking students their feeling. My "he had it coming" comment was not widely accepted. The people being bullied go through awful, traumatic things, but oftentimes the bullies are just passing along their own traumas. It doesn't make it right, but it is good to keep in mind. Bullies are often victims as well, and perhaps adults treating them that way might help prevent them from bullying themselves. I don't know. Story 12. Another opposite case. In high school, this guy would make very uncomfortable, subtle, racist remarks at me, such as "ching long ling long." It didn't really affect me since I literally have no idea who he was. Apparently he was well known in my school, but anyways, he continued doing this until I had a class with him during senior year. I walked up to him, asked, "Are we going to have a problem?" And he stopped afterwards and left me alone. I honestly didn't know why or how he was respected by the general population. He was a grade A scumbag. During senior year, he had relations with this 15-year-old, and he showed pictures to almost everyone at my school. He got in deep trouble for it and was essentially expelled from school. Fast forward to the present. Just a few months ago, I found out that he hung himself with a belt. You know, it's weird to think about those who kill themselves. Often the victims are not the ones who you could predict. This dude was really outgoing, and you wouldn't think he would have the capability of doing it. I don't know what pushed him to do it. Maybe some deep personal stuff happened after high school. I probably would have talked to him about it. Probably. Story 13. I used to be a real butthole to this girl in elementary. In secret, I was nice to her, though. She was really poor, and people would make fun of her for wearing the same shirt 2 days in a row. For Christmas, I gave her a bunch of candy, old clothes, and even my favorite shirt. It made me feel good. I never told any of my friends. She started looking at me a lot after that, and it kind of made me uncomfortable because I didn't want people to think we were friends. One time, I made a passing comment about how she should wear her hair in pigtail braids. The next day, she had pigtail braids, and it looked cute. My friends still made fun of her, and I made an obnoxious comment about how she'd listen to me and wanted to see if I could push it. I told her that she'd look cute with 2 small braids. The next morning, she cut her hair herself. From mid-back hair to a lopsided bob haircut that wasn't long enough for braids, but she had baby ponytails. Everyone made fun of her and said she looked ugly. I felt horrible. Later on in the year, me and my friends were playing tag and running around. She was running around with us. We were all talking about how she's stalking us and being pathetic. She stopped showing up to school. I heard her aunt died on the toilet. People made fun of her for that also. She didn't have parents, and I'm pretty sure Child Protection took her away after that. Once she was gone, I felt so guilty. Any time her name was called, it hurt my chest, as it should. I look her up every year to see if I can find her on Facebook. I have no idea if she's even alive. Trisha, I was so disgusting to you, and I am beyond ashamed. I'm so sorry. Don't hesitate to be nice to people now. You never know when the chance to change will be taken away, and all you'll be left with is guilt. Story 14. Throw away because I'm still too ashamed to admit to anyone after 13 plus years. I worry that a kid I bullied in 7th grade might have committed self-termination. I've tried to find him to apologize, but I don't even know where to start. I only remember his first name, don't have a yearbook from that year, and he moved again the next year, probably due to bullying. In 7th grade, I sat with 2 friends every day at lunch. When he moved to our school, it was the classic case of the bullied finally finding someone who was actually worse off than them and digging in. I had a crappy home life, poor, ugly, weird name, socially awkward, the whole thing. But this guy, he was new, he was awkward, he was effeminate. At the time, I was starting to question my identity, but I went along with all the ha-ha, this kid's gay bullying. Lots of people made fun of him, but he still chose to sit with us every day, and I joined in. I admitted to myself a year or two after this that I was definitely not straight, and I've thought about him probably at least once a week since then. Story 15. A teammate of mine committed self-termination in high school. He wasn't necessarily bullied, but he was never really cool and didn't fit in much. I didn't talk to anyone about it. I kept it all inside. I didn't go to his funeral. I quit baseball. All I could think of was how I should have known or I could have helped. I should have replied when he asked me to hang out the week before he killed himself. All this regret and anger built up inside of me and launched me into a year-long depression. I've since gotten better and realized I can't let myself feel guilt in any way. There's no way I could have known. I still think about him every day. Story 16. Let's also hold a candle for those who were bullied continually but didn't go through with self-termination. Perhaps they were slightly tougher or didn't quite reach the lowest point by a hair's breadth, or found an escape in books or computers. Those who are now passing through their 20s and beyond are suffering from continued depression, unable to hold down jobs or motivate themselves or form relationships, still hating themselves and having crushed self-esteem and social phobias. Some may never recover. Others, self-termination may simply have been delayed.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.